why are we here today? The focus of today is to talk about how to unify tech stack to gain customer context and to turn conversations into business growth. As you can tell, public speaking, slightly nervous, but we'll get through this. This is a topic that comes up quite often at Aircall. Our partners share the same sentiment as well. And hopefully, as our audience, you can resonate with the same feeling. If not, why are you guys here? I love the tagline that our team came up with, which was work smarter, not harder. In a post-pandemic world, I feel like constantly we're being asked to do a lot with very little, which creates a lot of challenges, and especially when we're using multiple tools that don't necessarily talk with one another. What happens is it creates issues such as slow response times. Your customers are a bit frustrated. All the things that you don't necessarily want to be facing happens. Luckily, today we have a great panel that we've put together who've experienced this firsthand and implemented solutions to overcome this. And they're here to share their insights, what kind of improvements they rolled out and how it's helped their business. So just to quickly set the agenda for today, it's not going to be just me talking, don't you worry. We're going to have the panel discussion. Sorry, we'll start off with some introductions first, have the panel discussion, and we'll save some time for audience Q&A. And then we'll get back to our favorite part, which is the drinking and the networking and the food. So let's start off with the reality of working with multiple tools. There's one team working with emails, you're perhaps using one solution for calling, you're using something else for WhatsApp, something else for SMS. What happens, it creates a lot of data silos, which means that lots of information is spread across. And as a business, your leadership and your management can't really take data-derived decisions, which is exactly what we're trying to do, right? And this makes it a lot harder to get a clear view on team performance and customer insight. Dan, does it sound familiar to you? Is this something that you've come across? I've just forgotten the introduction.
Yeah, I was going to introduce myself.
Someone from behind could have given me a head up. Jeez. Okay, you guys all know the first question. I want to bank on y'all to remember the first question. I'm going to kickstart the introduction. I'm Najma. I head partnerships here at Aircall. I've been with the business for nearly a year, and it's gone by really, really fast. But that's what happens when you work with a fast-paced business. Your introduction now, Dan.
Yes, thank you. Hi guys, Dan is my name. I'm on the sales team at Periti Digital, so HubSpot implementation partner, Aircall implementation partner. Great to be here. Thank you to the Groucho Club for having us. Great venue, really cool venue. Great to see some of our customers in here tonight as well. And looking forward, I'm not sure if we should, oh, there we go. Looking forward to picking it back up with you guys afterwards, and hopefully what we have to say tonight, you take some value out of it. So thanks very much.
Thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Leanne. I'm our head of customer experience and payments at the company WeFlex. I've been at WeFlex for about a year now, and we've been using Aircall for the last few months, and it's been a great experience so far, which is why we agreed to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Leah.
Hi, I'm Pavel. I'm the head of operations development at WeFlex. So WeFlex, we're based in West London. We're a company that provides vehicles for the ride-hailing delivery economy. I've been at the company since inception, so 9 years, but pretty much part of the furniture. Yeah, that's my story.
Amazing. So do we all agree that we're going to pretend like no one heard the first question? I'm going to repeat it just for the sake of some of those people who maybe weren't paying attention. So what did I say? Reality of working with multiple tools. We're all using a different system for various types of communication, creates data silos. This is the crux. And it's hard, it gets hard for leadership, right? Daniel,
Yes.
pretend you've just heard this for the first time. Does it sound familiar to you?
Very familiar. For context, I was in the HubSpot ecosystem for 2 years, and I've been in Periti now in the implementation side for 2 years. So almost every day it feels like we're talking about this topic of kind of fragmented tech stack or companies trying to kind of unify their platform essentially. So yes, obviously it's HubSpot's kind of key selling point as a single source of truth, but yeah, have the conversation a lot. How it kind of translates to problems we're hearing, I suppose, from the client side. A lot of frustration arises from kind of repeating themselves a lot. So if they have, I don't know, a customer service query that's going to a specific ticketing platform, but then they can't get a response there, they'll send it through to the general inbox, for example. Nobody in the company has any context over their initial query, they're repeating themselves, causes frustration, not good for satisfaction essentially. So from the client side, obviously that frustration translates into teams not working from the same systems. The leadership in the company, because nobody's working from the same systems, have no confidence in the data that they're using, for example. So it either takes them several days to report at month end or quarter end, but also they can't in confidence make leadership decisions for the next 3, 6, 12 months with data that they don't even trust. So yes, very common from the my day-to-day conversations essentially. But from the customer side, I suppose you guys would be better served to answer that.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that we faced, especially in the early years when the departments were forming. What we saw was that teams were inputting information in different systems, and that was creating massive inefficiencies and frustration, I guess, for not just the customers, but for the team as well. If a customer would call in, we were having to navigate through multiple systems just to try and find the issue that the customer was having. So obviously the way that we solved that was to have a centralized system where all of the customers, I guess, have a centralized system that all of our systems would talk to. So Periti helped us create those integrations with our other systems. They helped us restructure all of our processes into our new CRM. And then from there, we looked to consolidate. And then we introduced Aircall. And with Aircall, we were able to, I guess, just get a broader tech stack, right? So we were able to then see all of the insights from customers and all of the integrations all in one place.
Amazing. So from what you guys have mentioned, it sounds like the keywords that I got were frustration, lots of fragmentation, lots of difficulty to make decisions from a management perspective, right? So we've dealt with the challenges. Let's speak about the impact a little bit, right? So when there's data silos, when there's frustrations, what is the impact that it has ultimately to your business's bottom line? So if Leanne or Babrol, if you guys can highlight, did you experience this at WeFlex, and what was the ultimate impact from it?
Yeah, so one of the inefficiencies my team definitely faced was just like the speed of responding back to things. Obviously, if you're looking for information to contact a customer or someone calls in and you're in the middle of a conversation, you have to check 3 different platforms before you can provide an answer. That's definitely going to slow down the process. And so obviously, since implementing Aircall, one of the benefits I've found in particular for like our payments team when chasing payments is if they've sent an SMS to a customer, for example, and they're in the middle of like a call or email or something's going on, they can see like pop-up notifications that will come up and tell them that someone's replied back to them. They can click straight into that and just see any other communication and interaction that's happened with the customer as well, which just kind of like cuts down the time it takes them to investigate and gets back to them. And in general, especially if it's been like an inbound call or something that's come up, we've probably saved about 30 seconds per call, which doesn't seem like a lot, but actually over the volume of contact we receive has a huge impact.
Dan, I'm sure you guys speak to customers on a regular basis. Would you agree with what Leanne's mentioned? Is there anything else that you perhaps like to add?
Yeah, I think the general inefficiencies are the main one that you can see, I suppose, at the surface level. Like even Lisa, we spoke 10 minutes ago about saving 30 seconds per call, and even Leanne just said it there, 30 seconds per call doesn't seem like much, but if you do 10 calls a day, you're saving 5 minutes, that's half an hour a week, 2 hours a month, that sort of thing going forward, so it does compound quickly over time. A lot of those inefficiencies though don't raise alarm bells in the companies we speak to initially anyway, until they move to a unified platform, because they tend to kind of class them as operational norms or just the ways of working in the business with no intention to change. So we do hear that quite a lot, and it's trying to get into that mindset of, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. You can kind of change your approach and you can do something different to improve operations or efficiency or response times, customer satisfaction, going forward. Like we had a customer with a sales team and a service team working from different platforms. Sales team were they were misaligned on incentives. Sales team obviously want to sell, as they do. Customer service team were comped on retention. Sales team never wanted to send any leads through to customer success of the service team once they had been sold, because they felt like they had no visibility into what was happening with the conversation. And in their mind, they felt like there was a less of an upsell opportunity if it reached customer service or customer success than if they just kept the leads for themselves and continued to sell. Obviously, that's not sustainable. Those customers will churn if they get no support. Frustration from customer success then, because they're comped on churn. So you can see how they start to butt heads quite quickly. So easy scenario there was, I suppose, pairing the two together in the same system. And once there was a bit of visibility into what the other teams were doing, there was a lot more empathy from either side to, as to what their day-to-day process might be like. So yeah, I think it's just uncovering the fact that things don't have to be the way they are just because they might be operational norms, essentially.
That's great. That's a really good example. And I saw lots of heads nodding in the audience, which is always a great sign. We've spoken about challenges. We've spoken about the impact. I think as step number one, it's good that we've identified the problem. We noticed that when it comes to implementation, it can seem quite daunting to a lot of businesses, right? So just want to understand from the WeFlex team, how did you go about the implementation process? Obviously, you guys have implemented both HubSpot and Aircall. Why did you decide on those two solutions? How long did it take for you to implement itself? And what are some of the improvements that you've already started to see?
So implementation, that was me. So I would say implementation was seamless, and I'm not just saying that because we're here on the panel, getting fed, free drinks. I'm not saying it because of that. I'm saying that from experience. I've worked with previous providers and implemented those processes. And if I compare this experience to those, this was a lot smoother. At the start, I was given an implementation partner, or specialist, a porting specialist. I had access to the support team and to a technical specialist. So all of those, just a smoother transition. Yeah, so it was pretty straightforward. In total, it took like 3.5 weeks, and I guess most of that time was the porting. If it wasn't for porting, I probably could have done it in a week. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wrapped up within a week.
That's great. Dan, what would you say are the benefits for a business to utilize like an ecosystem approach? And just for the context of the group, when we say ecosystem approach, it's when a business is looking at a tool like HubSpot, at a tool like Aircall, and also choosing to work with a partner. Right? So if you could highlight a bit more on that, that'd be great. Yeah,
obviously like having an ecosystem that works seamlessly together is important. So obviously HubSpot and Aircall have got a strong partnership in that respect. The partner is also included in that. It's also, as we would say, it's essential to have a strong implementation that we can support with. Generally, we would say, like, in terms of what you're allocating from a resource perspective, a 1-to-1 ratio between the tech and the implementation, because we come across companies who, so they're spending 10K per month on the licensing for a software or for an ecosystem of software, but they might be trying to skimp or get as cheap an implementation as they possibly can. And what we like to say is it's the insurance against, the actual licensing working for you long term. But I think it's important to include not only the tech that works together, but the resources that are going to help you make it work together, because they can connect, but if nobody's managing that effectively, it's just more software sitting there that's unused or underutilized or not getting the full return on investment that you could be. So yeah, I would look at it as more holistic approach other than the specific pieces of tech that you would be using.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We, in fact, had an enablement session of one of the tools that we're using internally, and literally the feedback from the AEs was that we're using this tool essentially for the bare minimum. We could be using so much more functionality. There's so much in there that we haven't even heard about. And sometimes the teams that are actually evaluating are not the teams that are actually using the solution. So that's why having a partner, speaking with the right people within the business of the tools that you're evaluating, all of this plays into the usage that you're going to get out of it. Thank you so much for sharing that. We've spoken about the challenges, the impact. You guys can tell I'm a list girl, right? Just going through every single line item. The next one is, when you're looking to implement a tool, it obviously has to grow with your business. It's got to be scalable. It can't be, okay, we've moved into this one tool, we've used it for a year and a bit, and now we're looking at something new. What's the next new shiny thing? It's a lot of work, a lot of migration, lots of tasks that nobody wants to be doing, right? So again, to the WeFlex team, it'd be great to understand what are some of the strategies or functionalities that helped you with that scalability aspect.
Yeah, I would say a big one that helped my teams was some of the automations that are on there. So I mentioned, obviously, we have a team that does credit control, for example. So if they were chasing for a payment, they might set up a dialer file just to run through the list and see who we can get through to. Anyone who we don't connect to at the moment, we've managed to set up an automation to send an SMS afterwards. And actually, with the previous systems we were using before Aircall, that had to be very much 3 separate processes. Like we'd set up a file, we see who wasn't called, someone would have to export it, and then we would send out emails and SMSs separately afterwards. Whereas now it's an automated function, which saves a couple hours a day within my team, which is obviously brilliant because there's so much more we could be working on at the moment.
That's great. And Dan, I'm sure scalability is something that comes up quite often when you're speaking with customers as well, right? Is there anything interesting that you can share on this topic?
Yeah, like scalability with customers is a funny one because, again, like you having the fragmented tech stack conversation, a lot of customers want to scale, but they want to remain how they're doing business the exact same way and just like scale magically. And I don't want to be the AI guy here, like, but like I'm obviously learning it myself as I go along. But we'd always kind of recommend leaning into that insofar as not trying to, I suppose customers who want to maintain that personal touch, it's not a good idea to start automating everything through AI and just become a robot. But you do want to automate the standardized elements that you can, such as the admin, clerical tasks that free up your time for sales teams, customer service teams to do what they do best and actually speak to customers and not log notes, like for instance, log call notes, you know, follow up with menial queries that customers don't care if there's a personal touch to, you know, providing them their account number, for instance, or something like that, you know. So it's about, we try and tell customers that you can use that element of AI to, as well, standardize those tasks that should be standardized and free up that opportunity to get more face time with your clients. So that's the easiest way to scale, other than just hiring people, that we would recommend to customers who want to kind of bridge that gap. So
we went through, I think, 20 minutes in a panel session without mentioning AI. That's going to be some sort of record, but thank you so much for bringing that up, Dan. This question is an open-ended question for the panel. What is the one piece of advice that you'd like to give to businesses that are currently dealing with tool disconnectivity or overload?
I would say integrate as soon as possible. Don't leave it, because it will become a bigger problem the longer you leave it. Understand the key processes and information that your team need, and then use that data into a centralized system like a good CRM or an internal system. Yeah,
I would second that. I mean, by us integrating all our separate systems that we had, actually, the amount of time it's saved in the team. Obviously, Dan touched on adding notes and stuff like that. By the team being able to add notes in one system, it also integrates through to HubSpot. It sometimes allows us to send automations to raise tasks on our separate systems as well. So actually, the investment in that one system that can integrate everything could actually end up saving you a lot of money in other areas in the long run.
Sure. I think a lot of whenever we hear integration as a partner, we always think cost straight away, because it's a lot of dev work to kind of connect all these platforms. But there tends to be, when there's so much to do all at once and so much on the company's plate, they tend to get paralysis by analysis, and they just don't do anything at all. So what we would say, and what we stress to companies who we kind of see with these problems, is just pick your highest priority task that you want to fix. Usually, if it's a complete mess, that's just the connection between sales and customer service. Because, for instance, if customer service can understand the sales or purchase history of a client when they call, it's a lot easier to solve their problem there and then on the call. It's a lot better, or a lot more, I suppose, prevalent to gaining higher customer satisfaction levels, CSAT scores, that type of thing. And that's the easiest way to, I suppose, improve things, keeping the customers you have rather than going out to find customers, because it's a lot easier to do the former than the latter. So yeah, I would map it out, top priority, lowest priority, and just work through it one by one. It doesn't have to be done all at once. It's more of a marathon, not a sprint type of situation with these things. So yeah, from an implementation side, that's what I would say.
What a great panel to have. They've made my job so much easier. My big takeaways are definitely going to be integrate as soon as possible, and that businesses usually have paralysis by analysis. So great taglines. I'm not going to quiz you guys on this later, but now it's time for Q&A from the audience. Any questions?
Hi. I was wondering, so you touched on a little bit there about maximising systems. I was wondering if you had any advice for how to encourage, the wider kind of sales team how to explore systems a little bit more. For example, I know, from my own experience, having a play around with different systems, HubSpot as an example, you get to learn quite a bit, and I want to encourage the wider team to do that. Have you any examples or advice for how to encourage them to just go off and explore a little bit more to help them understand and get the most out of that system?
Yeah, I think we did a lot of that just before implementation or before it was released to everyone. Babel kindly gave the sales team a few licenses so they did have a chance before we officially switched over to just explore it a bit further and to click around more and give them some dedicated time to make sure they do that, and it really did make a difference. Like, it was just a much smoother transition when everything went live. Everyone felt confident, they felt more capable to ask for new features, which obviously we were able to share with the account managers, but that definitely helped.
Give them a sandbox. That's what I do. Don't trust them in live. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I feel like the sales team is generally the easiest to get on board, because based on your commission structure, if their paycheck depends on their adoption of the system and they can see productivity in it, they'll do it. So from an implementation and adoption side, we tend to have two approaches. It's either the carrot approach or the stick approach. The carrot approach is that, okay, they see the enhanced productivity and the bigger commission check that they can get if they're using the system. The stick approach would be, if it's not in the CRM, it doesn't count towards your target, so you better use it, sort of thing. So obviously we prefer the carrot approach most of the time, but sometimes you mix in a bit of both. Side.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
What were your biggest reservations around investing or moving to new technology? So in your case, HubSpot and Aircall. And what was kind of the, sentiment or maybe event that led you guys to bite the bullet? What encouraged that decision to just get on with it and make that change?
Okay, I will. I think part of the incentive is basically for us, specifically my team, and to be honest, majority of the business, about 75%, probably more closer to 80 of all our customer contact comes through the telephone, and the current phone system we were using was just not fit for purpose at all. So it was important for us to switch, but also to find the right system, because as a business, obviously, we've been growing the last few years and we're continuing to grow. So finding a system where actually we could consolidate all the different platforms we were using, we could find a clearer view for what the team see of the customer, as well as building more automations, because that where we were at that time, actually, as that base was growing, we're having to grow the team, and as everyone knows, after a period of time, that's obviously not a practical place to be. So it was important to us to find somewhere where it gave us that scalability and we could see how those automations would work, as well as finding somewhere that had good customer feedback as well. We were able to reach out to a few companies who used Aircall already, and actually we had positive feedback from all of them, and actually other companies in the industry as well obviously used Aircall, so it gave us a lot more confidence before making that investment.
Yeah, I would second what Leanne said. So we had a list of requirements. We would take those to different providers, and I guess the company that met most of our requirements, right? So that was important. Also cost is always important. You want to see what everything's going to cost you for what you're getting. So with Aircall, we took the AI and the reporting, so all of those combined were perfect weeks for us.
That was a great question, and we didn't even have to bribe you guys for that answer.
Nice.
So thank you so much. I did see that there was another question back there.
Yeah, slightly biased Aircall question. just expanding on Molly's question about the, I guess, quantifying the value. So you mentioned the piece, I guess this is more for me, so I sell Aircall, by the way. So it's like, what should I advise my customers to do as they sort of justify the transition? So you mentioned that time saving, like having 30 seconds back for every call.
Yeah.
But then also, I guess, the unique use case for your collections team. So it sounds like that's something I would never encourage a customer to say how much more money can you collect if you're making more calls. Like, are those types of metrics things that you're tracking today? Would you recommend that that's what other customers consider as they consider tools like Aircall, but also just integrating the tech stack? It's not just about how easy it is to use, but also what the other.
Yeah, I think like what made it probably easier for us is actually we had a very clear set of requirements, and before going out and looking for the provider that we wanted, we literally sat together, we put together a Google sheet of actually what we need to get out of this, and also not just today, but actually a year, 2 years from now, what do we want the teams to be doing? So if you have someone that you're trying to pitch to, for example, I think just being clear on those requirements, and then that will give you the opportunity to actually sell what your product can do to achieve that, essentially. Like, we were definitely for like our payments team, it was important for us to have a dialer, just so obviously we can contact more people. The more conversations we have, it increases obviously your chances of collecting. From a support point of view, we obviously need an inbound function that worked well. We wanted the ability to make callbacks. We wanted the ability to automate some responses after the call as well, so people are not like copy and pasting or adding the same template into customers after calls. So it was definitely like those efficiencies and what features did we want in the future was the main focus initially.
I would say as well, maybe have prospective customers ask for feedback from other customers. So I did that before we went to Aircall. I went to part of Operations Nation. So I reached out to that forum and said, look, what's Aircall like? And the feedback was all good. So that was something that I put forward to the team when I was kind of presenting the option to them.
That's actually great, Leanne. The point that you mentioned that you had cross-function alignment before you went into the market and evaluated products, because that's not something that we see commonly from customers. So that's a great point there. I did see a few questions from there.
Yeah, in terms of customization, were there any that you required that you had to put into a queue of Aircall for them to deliver? And in terms of sort of road mapping and feature additions, how do you handle that?
So we did want, yeah, it's a bit broad. We wanted to see, before we went with Aircall, we wanted to see their roadmap. So that's something that they provided to us. We wanted to see, okay, how are they developing? Because it's always important to understand where the company's going. What was the other part of the question, sorry?
Were there any customizations that you had to overcome as part of your initial approach?
So no, because it works so seamlessly with HubSpot. It was all kind of out the box. It's pretty easy. The reporting is all kind of laid out for you as well. So it's just understanding which reports to use. But in terms of customization, we didn't need to do much.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can take the roadmap question as well. Something that's coming up is where we have an integration with WhatsApp that we're rolling out quite quickly. We have something that a lot of customers and partners are quite excited about called virtual agents, where it should increase a lot of efficiencies and bring a lot more control into how your teams are speaking to the end customer itself. Yeah.
I had a question specifically for Dan, if you guys want to jump in. In terms of, like starting from the principle that every HubSpot is different, right? What do you think it has been the biggest challenge in implementing an HubSpot project, and what was the longest timeline you and your team have given to any HubSpot implementation project?
Longest timeline after the latter first, like I suppose we're still working with somebody and we signed them on last June, but that's obviously it's the more the scope, the longer you work in terms of like the more advanced functionality they need or the greater the workload, obviously the longer it takes. But this particular project, there was a lot of scope creep and scope changes throughout, so that can impact the timeline a lot. In terms of every HubSpot instance being different. Like the biggest challenges we find is because the tool is so dexterous and you can do quite a bit in terms of custom object creation, data modeling, property creation, that sort of thing. It's actually gauging preferences on what customers want, because the area of the market that HubSpot is at, we do get the likes of the Salesforces moving to HubSpot for ease of customization, lower cost of ownership, that sort of thing. But a lot of the customers are actually coming from a kind of lesser CRM and making the step up, and HubSpot tends to be their entry into the kind of Rolls-Royce end of the market, for want of a better word. So they haven't had the exposure to a top level CRM yet. So it's almost like coaching them through their expectations as they grow substantially once they see the tool. And I suppose keeping them on the straight and narrow is the toughest part of it, because see, the guys will attest here tonight. Callum and Seb have been working at HubSpot for yonks now, and we can build pretty much anything as a team, but it's honing in and validating a plan to implement is probably the most challenging, and also setting expectations as well about what can be done in the time we have and that sort of thing. But yeah, functionality wise, I wouldn't say is as much of a challenge as it is the expectation side of things.
So would you reckon, so sorry, as a question, would you reckon like the change management, the most difficult part with when the implementation comes in place?
Change management, and we spoke about at the start, adoption.
Yes.
Probably, is key. So again, when companies move from say a Salesforce or a Dynamics to HubSpot, adoption tends to be a lot quicker because the staff profile is used to working with a CRM. When they're used to working off, we still get people coming from spreadsheets to HubSpot, so that's a bigger change. And depending on their ways of working, depending on what they are used to doing, particularly if somebody's worked in that company for 15 years and nothing has changed, it's very hard to show them the benefits right out the gate of what HubSpot can do. But adoption is key. As I said at the start, like we have the two-pronged approach of the carrot and the stick. In reality, there's a lot more care that goes into it than just that. But yeah, it's getting their confidence in using the tool, because it's their livelihoods at the end of the day. It's a tool that's meant to help them in their job, and if they don't have the confidence that it can do that, then they're not going to be receptive to anything you're telling them from an implementation side.
Thank you.
I hope that's answered your question, but thank you so much for the great questions, you guys, and thanks for being such a wonderful audience and laughing at all my Safa jokes. Thank you to the panel for making today what it was, and if any of your questions were unanswered, please feel free to find any of us and the Aircall team. We'd love to answer it. I don't want to keep you guys anymore for the drinks, and yeah, just want to say thank you to everyone for being here.